Friday edition, orange and blue today. People are wondering why, Andrew Mason. Why did you bring in JK Dobbins? Why did Dobbins leave without a contract?
Well, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen maybe down the line. We saw what happened with Evan Engram back in March, right? I mean,
where he leaves and he comes back?
Yeah, and also, it's not like teams are banging down the door of JK Dobbins at this point. I mean, he's sitting there on the shelf. We're in early June. Nobody signed him. There isn't a lot of competition at the moment. There doesn't appear to be a lot of competition at the moment. He's been out on the market for nearly 3 months. What's the rush? You have mandatory minicamp next week, but odds are if you got him in, were you going to have him out there? You'd probably have him just watching practice if he were out there after being signed. You probably would not have him taking any snaps anyway. So, yeah. What's the rush? What's the big deal? If you don't get him in now, maybe you get him in later. I mean, I think it's one of those things where you bring him in, you chat with him, maybe you get a feel for things. You sort of get the bug in his ear, basically. You start opening the lines of communication. You show him around a little bit, and you circle back at some point once you've turned the pages a little bit on the running backs you have. And of course, you saw some of the running backs pictured there in the slide that we opened the show with: Jaleel McLaughlin, Tyler Badie, RJ Harvey, and Audric Estime, the 4 running backs who were in uniform and practicing on Thursday with Blake Watson over on the side field.
Yeah, I believe the interest is real, Mace, but I also believe this is a motivating factor for those running backs that are pictured in our slide today.
Yeah. You know, put them on notice a little bit, give them, a little kick, a little kick in the rear. I'd say probably the guy who's least on notice there is RJ Harvey.
Right.
Even though his skill set and use of RJ Harvey a factor and where he is as a rookie. Yeah, because as we've discussed, pass protection for a rookie running back is something that is not the easiest thing to get down right away. And JK Dobbins in there certainly would make some sense and would ease a bit of the burden on RJ Harvey, and maybe JK Dobbins being somebody who fills a Samaje Perine type of role, the role that Perine had in 2023, someone who's in on some third downs, who's in there maybe in close and late situations in the end of games. Maybe he's in there in 2-minute packages. That might make some sense, a situation where you need more of a pass protecting back, someone who's going to stay in a little bit more often and protect Bo Nix. That would make some sense because RJ Harvey might be at least a year out in terms of really being able to be a player who's not a liability there, just because it's nothing against RJ Harvey. It just simply takes time for a running back going from the college level to the pro level to really grasp that. It's not a negative on RJ Harvey in any way. It just takes time to get that down.
It wasn't a negative for Bucky Irving last year, who played 42% of the snaps because they had Rashad White as the back they trusted.
Yes, and Bucky Irving's probably going to be better at that this year than he was last year. Because you get better at that with time. Javonte Williams wasn't a great pass protecting back as a rookie. By the time he got through his 4th season with the Broncos, he was, if not the best pass protecting back in the NFL, certainly in the top 3 or 4. It was one of the things that kept him on the field, even though he was a sub 4 yards per carry running back. I mean, he wasn't a very effective ball carrier last year, left a lot of meat on the bone. It's one of the reasons why he's no longer a Denver Bronco. And Sean Payton kind of alluded to the yardage that wasn't gained last year and talked about the good job the offensive line did. Yesterday, because we're recording this show and putting this show up on Friday, if you're watching this over the weekend, on Thursday, he talked about the offensive line and basically affirmed that the run block win rate numbers, which we often talk about, the ESPN analytics saying the Broncos were number 1 in the league in run block win rate. And he said those were basically accurate. And the Broncos still didn't have a very efficient run game last year. He basically put it on the running backs, which is a reason why RJ Harvey is here and Javonte Williams is not here. But Javonte still played in a lot of situations because he was effective in pass pro. You can't expect RJ Harvey to do that right away. That's why you need somebody else in there. Audric Estime in year 2 being around, could he be effective in pass pro? Potentially. But again, there's the ball security issue. Ball security is job security. And right now he doesn't have that because he had a high fumble rate. JK Dobbins, low fumble rate, 6th-year running back, should be better in pass pro. Thus, he might make sense. Of course, the big thing is, can he stay healthy? And the fact that he hasn't been able to stay healthy is why he's still sitting there on the market right now. But you've opened the dialogue, but you've also sort of given, you've put guys on notice again. And probably you've put Audric Estime on notice more than anybody else. Again, Jaleel McLaughlin, he's kind of on his own. He's in his own category. He's in his own box there. And I still anticipate Jaleel's going to be on this team no matter what when you get to the regular season, and he's still going to get a handful of snaps. Probably being that quick change of pace guy that you throw out there and get him the ball a handful of times a game to make it to give your other running backs a relief, and also just throw a curveball in there.
I might get sing-songy on you, Mase, so I apologize for that. It's Friday, but in Step Brothers, when Will Ferrell's like, let's give him something to talk about. If you go away after mandatory minicamp and before training camp, if I'm Audric Estime, I'm staying in the best of shape. And this has happened before. It's sometimes been the opposite way with my man CJ Anderson, who was like 40 pounds too heavy.
Oh boy.
And I think Studesville wasn't very happy. He comes back and he was like 219. Maybe it wasn't 40 pounds. He was like 240, and then he came back at 219. So 20 pounds heavy. If you're Audric Estime, though, something to talk about, something to think about, Mase. Because they did not sign Dobbins. So the interest is real. This isn't any sort of decoy or motivation. We have to bring in Dobbins to motivate these guys. They're plenty motivated, and now it's going to be on their mind. Well,
let's hear what Sean Payton had to say just about the running back room and Dobbins when he was asked about that on Thursday.
It's just another good football player that we've seen firsthand. I've seen for a while. And just the importance of that position group. We really like the group right now we're working with. It's just another opportunity to possibly bring in another good football player to help us win.
Man, that voice.
2 weeks of yelling.
2 weeks of cigars, something. I don't know.
Yeah. He's out there. He's got a lot to say to his players.
Mm-hmm.
A lot's been built up. He only has 2 weeks of OTAs instead of 3. So
he's got a lot to say, a little bit of time.
He's packing it in there, basically.
Yeah. And another thing they avoid, and they don't do this for this reason, Mase, but they avoid us chuckleheads asking JK Dobbins questions past the one he just got. Because they sign him, then all of a sudden next week at mandatory, it's like, JK, what about JK? What about RJ? What about JK? Like, nah, that's avoided. And it doesn't mean this won't be circled back. And if you're JK Dobbins, let's say the Broncos did offer him the tender, which I believe is 1.6. There's a couple of different numbers out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say they offered him the tender. JK would be smart to say, you know what? I will go ahead and wait. And to see if there's another team where another back gets hurt and all of a sudden his 1.6 turns into 3 million. Or 4 million, so it's smart on JK's part. And I believe both sides here, it could have been seen as exploratory, real interest, but exploratory on both sides. JK gets a feel for what they're doing here in Denver. They get a feel for who he is. They talk a little numbers, and the numbers can move if they need to move. But if not, there you go.
There you go. And then maybe you get next week in minicamp to sort of see how the guys respond too.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. And if you get the response you like, then maybe you say, okay, let's go through at least the start of training camp with status quo and we'll see. And then if not, then you make a move. I mean, something, sort of tells you that JK Dobbins may still be on the market when training camp starts. Same might be true for Nick Chubb.
Oh, yeah. Jamal Williams.
Yeah.
All those veterans out there.
And it might behoove those guys to wait. I mean, it's the same thing with Von Miller, who, of course, Broncos fans think about over on the opposite side of football. For veterans of a certain career stage, it does reach a point where you're better suited and better served by simply sitting back, waiting it out, waiting on the best opportunity to come that usually happens because of either injury or just a team letting their young options get shots and then realizing, okay, maybe what we have on hand isn't ready for the task, isn't up for the job just yet, and then we need to go find a veteran to get through the year.
Right.
That's fine. That's sort of how the game is played. It's done that way in baseball as well. So, but at least you've opened the dialogue, you've opened the lines of communication. You've broken bread, you've chatted, you feel pretty good that you can easily pick up that phone now and say, hey, JK, we need you. What's it going to take?
Right.
Simple as that. And to me, if you do figure out a contract, what it would take would probably be an incentive-based deal. I mean, if it's Nick Chubb, same type of thing, heavily incentive-based deal, make it work. If you need to get that veteran presence in there, figure it out, make it work. Me, if it's up to me, I'd still turn the page with the young guys and see where it goes. Give them a shot. I think by and large, the faith in the young players last year was rewarded. So I'm still more inclined to do that. At the same time, the Broncos are moving into a different phase than they were last year. Last year, although we know that they were not using their dead money figure as an excuse, that they still expected to go out there and do well. Let's face it, the expectations and goals realistically, they felt very good about getting to the playoffs and being one and done. Not happy with the loss, certainly, but when the immediate pain of that defeat subsided, they felt pretty good about how far they'd come and the outcome they had with the season. As we know, as I learned from chatting with Greg Penner, a similar outcome to this season will not be considered acceptable. It will not have the same reaction in that building. So it's a different scenario. You want your young players to do well, but if they don't come along, you are considering different options to maximize the return from each position. You're not simply going to sit back and say, well, we're going to wait and see if what we have on hand develops. You're going to bring in some reinforcements to microwave production at a position. You're just in a different space now, expectation-wise, than you were at this time last year.
It's a step you want to take. That's what you're doing. And I said this on the radio. I'll repeat it for this audience. And I'm not mentioning anyone specifically, although we can think of some. The roster with only a 14% turnover, by the way, lowest in the NFL.
Yeah.
Which I think says something. Some of the players that fans really love, and, I'll go back to the past, like a Jordan Taylor or whatever, like some of the players that this team had to have last year were simply because of they had to have them.
Yeah.
They weren't the caliber of player that they have this year, and the competition is better. So I'm with you on letting the young guys play and keeping Dobbins on speed dial.
Yes.
Speed dial.
Well, I mean, just think of how players that started and played extensively last year are backups now. PJ Locke was a solid starter last year.
He's a good starter.
Good starter. He's a backup now. Brandon Jones and Talanoa Hufanga are your starters at safety. Justin Sternad, you got some quality games there for a while before you got into December, and then you kind of crossed the Rubicon, basically, of reaching a point where you couldn't handle that many injuries, and then the quality fell off. And now he's pretty clearly a backup and may not even be the first guy off the bench at inside linebacker, because Drew Sanders is showing some signs of progress out there. And that's another thing. Nobody's staying the same. Drew Sanders, okay, 2 years ago when you threw him out there at inside linebacker in Miami in the 70-point debacle, he looked lost at that moment. Drew Sanders, watching him out there in practice right now, after the Achilles, after being moved back and forth, doesn't look as lost anymore. Looks more settled, looks more comfortable. Nothing stays the same. It's like water. It's always in motion.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
It's the future.
Yeah. Always in motion, the future is, as our friend Yoda would say.
Mm-hmm. That is for sure. An abbreviated Friday show, but we've got a bunch of stuff coming for you during the downtime after mandatory minicamp. But of course, Mase will be out there for mandatory minicamp. So as we're out here on Friday, Mase, hope everyone has a great weekend. How can folks, before they enjoy their weekend, help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell,
so that you
never
miss vid.
vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mase Denver. I'm at Cecil Amy saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty?